Is that a new jacket?
That is a new jacket.
It's nice. Where'd you get it? I like it a lot.
it's not. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not new. It's new to you.
Oh, excuse me.
It's not. It's it's like NBC. It's if you haven't seen it, it's new to you.
You've just been holding out on me.
Yeah, I've been holding out. Well, it's actually, you can't see it. This is a little backstage podcast magic here. You can't see it. It's missing one of the buttons, so I don't really wear it out anymore.
So it's perfect for podcasting.
It's perfect for me, yeah, because it's only up to here.
I confess that I bought a shirt that is more cropped than I anticipated it being, and I've decided it's just a podcast top, and nobody will ever know.
Yeah,
how will they know? How will they know?
Tell the IRS that. There you go.
Well, I had a couple of clips I wanted us to talk about up top before we get into the meat of our interview today. Although at least one of them is related because of the theme of collective power and whether or not the left is willing to use it.
Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia has essentially, used what seems to be a veto power against a lot of progressive priorities, including some of the ones that you've mentioned. But in the House, Democrats have this 2-seat majority. There are 6 members of the squad, of which you are a part. What's stopping you from flexing that same power for your agenda? You just said you would vote against a compromise on qualified immunity. Are you prepared, and the rest of the squad prepared, to use that kind of veto power that you have if you vote as a bloc?
I'm prepared to do whatever is needed to make sure that that our agenda moves forward. But I can't speak for the rest of the squad members. At the end of the day, my sister Ayanna Presley says it all the time. You vote alone. And you're voting for your districts. So you're voting for the people who voted you in.
So that was Cori Bush responding to a very good question from Abby Phillips as to whether or not the squad is willing to be a group outside of just a name, a catchy branding name, but in terms of actually using their power for good. And the answer seems to be you vote alone.
The premise of that question said that they're drawing a red line on watering down legislation to restrict qualified immunity, which I haven't been following that.
Me either. But the broader point is that regardless of whatever the issue is, I mean, qualified immunity, to your point, is something that Cori Bush has talked a lot about, right? She is a Black Lives Matter activist who kind of made her bones in that area talking about police reform. And so the question is more pointed because it is about an issue that her community does care about. And that, frankly, the communities of, I would gather, all of the squad members. You've got Ilhan Omar literally in Minnesota at ground zero for a lot of this stuff. The Bronx is no stranger to police overreach. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Detroit, again, it's a concern. So, I understand a certain kind of resistance to speaking out of turn or speaking for the squad, but I would presume that the squad would have already had these conversations already and come to an agreement about what they're willing to do as a bloc or not. And so being caught flat-footed on this kind of question, which in any normal media cycle you would expect because of how much the online left and journalists have been talking about this issue of forcing the vote, all that we've been talking about, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema forcing the vote, all of the articles that have been written about the narrow margin in the House, it's sort of telling that she's even caught this unawares on this question.
That the squad is not, like a cohesive bloc in Congress.
But apparently they haven't even had a conversation about voting as a bloc. And that's the extent that they have. Ayanna Presley, at least, has said, well, we're not doing it. You vote alone.
Well, to what degree is the squad more than a branding exercise?
Apparently not at all.
That's what originally, that was just kind of how the media referred to these 4 politicians, 2 of whom defeated incumbents in 2018, 2 of whom did not, but were, notable for being Muslim women in the House who are radical on a few things. But otherwise, if there is any kind of, ideological, unity among, what has been called the squad. I don't really see it, because Ayanna Pressley is more of like, left progressive kind of politician, and someone like Jamal Bowman or AOC, like these are explicitly socialist politicians. Maybe like in the blender of Washington, those distinctions do not matter that much. But I mean, just from my recollection of how those races were won, they were won in, very different circumstances.
Well, sure. And you can have, and people have had conversations about the fact that not every squad member is equally left. Ayanna Pressley often called out for being perhaps the least left amongst them. But squad or not, the point is that there's Abby's question is with a 2-vote margin. It doesn't even have to be a squad member. There's also Mark Pocan and Pramila Jayapal and a bunch of other people who haven't been part of the branding exercise. Why hasn't there been a conversation, apparently, about a willingness to do with that group what Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema do, or what a handful of blue dog Democrats in the House are perfectly willing to do? And what's revealing about this question isn't even that she said, no, we're going to work with House leadership. It feels almost like she might be willing, Cori Bush might be willing to take some hard votes individually, but is not in a position, because apparently no agreement has been made or no conversation has been had, to talk about collective voting as a bloc. And moreover, to the point, your point about how progressive various members of the squad are, it's almost immaterial when we're talking about issues that every Democrat is ostensibly behind, like $15 minimum wage or Medicare for all, or getting various committee appointment concessions, or even qualified immunity is overwhelmingly, is something that, or ending qualified immunity is something that all of these people individually support, I would guess, without Googling it right now in the moment.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so the question is not necessarily, is it right to call them all a squad? Is it just a branding exercise? It's obviously a branding exercise, as evidenced by this clip. But whatever you call them, why are they not willing to stand together? Why all that shifty-eyed hesitancy? I want to hug her and take her into a room and say, is everything okay? Like, do you feel unsupported? Like, what's going on? Like, who is threatening you, and with what, and how can we help?
Do you need a podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't mean to belabor that point. But to the extent that there are frustrations on the left about how we use power, it's because of moments like this. Because power exists, not because it's hard to grow power. It is. Not because it's hard to get to a place where we have leverage. It is. It's because when there are opportunities like this, where there literally is leverage already, because of the work of thousands of organizers who helped to get these folks elected, what you going to do with it now?
Right. It's kind of, those were national efforts to elect people like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, predicated on the idea that, we know that both major parties are totally captured by capital. Mm-hmm. There's like some labor has more influence in the Democratic coalition, but it is still just a small part of that coalition relatively. And the idea is, okay, well, we can identify the mechanisms through which capital captures individual politicians, and we can, use national online organizing in order to disrupt some of those mechanisms. For instance, if you're someone like AOC, okay, you can raise money, you can raise millions and millions of dollars, like more than pretty much any other House member, nearly every other House member, without taking, any corporate donations whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You can just get, collect small donations from people that you never meet. You don't have to hold fundraisers. You don't have to dial for dollars. Like all of these other politicians are constantly doing. Like that's pretty much the job description, is sitting in a room and just calling up, rich backers of the Democratic Party and trying to get them to donate to their own campaign accounts or the, D-Trip, whatever. And obviously, like just the nature of our system of representation, okay, like you do have local concerns. You do have to represent a district of, 650 or so thousand people who have, diverse concerns and so on. But there is also a feeling that, okay, on the other side of that, we, on the left and the socialist side, we are building a national movement and expect to get something out of that, some kind of, national strategy that isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this next clip is with, this next clip features someone who I feel less like, explain it to me and I'll give you a hug about, because he has not historically shared our interests or fought our battles. But it's a similar kind of theme of everyone pretending that there are barriers in the way of us having nice things that don't actually exist.
One thing you failed to get done in these 100 days, a major thing, was a hugely popular $15 minimum wage. Are you willing to include it in the next budget reconciliation proposal? And are you willing to overrule the Senate parliamentarian if she blocks you again, or even fire her, as Republican Majority Leader Trent Lott did in 2001? I mean, you're elected by the people, she's not.
No, but the bottom line is that there are these set rules by the parliamentarian. And again, if you want to overrule her, if you want to do anything like that, it takes 51 votes. So I can't snap my fingers and do it. I have to pursue the same strategy of strength, unity, and understanding the need for change to do any of those things. So far, as I said, it's produced results. So the bottom line is very simple, and that is that we must produce change. So far, we have, using the methods that we have. We haven't had 100% success, but we've done very well, even in your eyes, which you're no slouch, maybe. And we'll continue to pursue it.
So the strategy is strength and unity. Just want to be clear, the strategy is strength and unity.
Yeah. So,
otherwise the answer is like, no, we're just going to do the same thing we did last time.
We're going to lie. So the questions from the media are getting better. Abby Phillips' question was great. And remember, this is the same Abby Phillips. I don't think that she's, well, I don't owe Abby Phillips anything. This is the same Abby Phillips who asked Bernie during the campaign, why were you a sexist to Elizabeth Warren? Do you remember that debate?
I remember doing the sexism. Yeah, I don't remember the discourse around it.
After the news dropped that Elizabeth Warren said that Bernie said that she couldn't run because she's a woman, there was a debate like the next day. And Abby Phillips is one of the commentators, and she asked Elizabeth Warren about it, like, did this happen? And Elizabeth Warren basically said yes.
CNN reported yesterday and Senator Warren confirmed in a statement that in 2018, you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on this, because this is what Donald Trump and maybe some of the media want. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States. Go to YouTube today. There's a video of me 30 years ago talking about how a woman could become president of the United States.
Senator Sanders, I do want to be clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed.
But the fact is that Abby Martin asked a very good question, and so did Mehdi Hasan. The problem is the lack of follow-up that points out that, of course, you can fire the parliamentarian. Mehdi actually said it, built it into the question. George Bush, too, fired his parliamentarian so that we could get the Bush tax cuts.
Yeah, Trent Lott did, yeah.
Trent Lott did, yes. So first of all, even that is a fiction. I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy into that. The idea that there's not a relationship between the Speaker of the House and the President of the United States, the idea that there's not a relationship between the President of the United States and so-called rogue senators like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, it's all a fiction. And we get into this in our upcoming interview, the extent to which there is coordination across all of these individuals to help cover for the extent to which they can like shift blame around so no one has to take all the heat all the time. And the administration can get away without doing the thing that the people want because the business interests that funded the campaign don't want them to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you are a member of the president's party. You rely on the president's support to get reelected. And if the president were to come down and campaign against you, then you'd be pretty fucked. There would have to be a very unique set of circumstances that would allow you to withstand that. Right. And even people in states where the president is unpopular, they still want the president's support. So, that's Joe Manchin in West Virginia, where Biden is unpopular, would still want Biden's support to get reelected, in the same way that back in 2006, Lincoln Chafee in Rhode Island, a state that did not like George W. Bush, still welcomed George W. Bush's endorsement. And, what we just watched during the Trump years is the only time that anyone would defy Trump, who, again, is still considered, extreme and unpopular. The only time was when they were retiring. And that's it. And they were about to go on go write a book called, The Courage of Conviction, about how they, stood up to Trump or whatever bullshit.
Take liberal money.
The census estimates for reapportionment just came out. How many seats every state is going to get. And this map is going to be worse for the Democrats come 2022. Texas is gaining 3 seats, I believe. Florida is gaining 2. These are red states with, big Republican legislative majorities. They're going to be drawing up the districts. New York, I think, is losing 2. I think California is losing 1 or 2. I think Illinois is losing 1. The Rust Belt throughout, which has been, the Republicans, Democrats have been fighting over that area, but they're losing seats largely to the benefit of red states. So this, very slim Democrat majority in the House, we don't know exactly where the lines are going to be drawn yet, but I would say that if you ran that, same election again in 2022, everyone voted the exact same way, that would not be a majority, just based on that.
Yeah, I right before we recorded today, I did a CBSN hit about Biden's first 100 days, and the question, one of the people on the panel, suggested that, it's pretty early on for Biden and that he has time to address some of these other big ticket items. And I think he said that in good faith. But the reality is, Democrats are being told that, voters are being told that, just give Biden time. There's no time. There's no time for many reasons. One, because there's certain things that are only going to happen through budget reconciliation, which there are limited opportunities for. Right. And some of those opportunities Biden is sabotaging for all the reasons we discussed on the podcast with the parliamentarian, et cetera. And also because he is not going to have a united Congress for very much longer. And in fact, it might even be before 2022, because as people have been saying, we're like one heart attack, one car accident or whatever, the things that happen in life, away from losing someone. On one of these narrow majorities.
Someone we care about, like Dianne Feinstein. That's why we all need to, hold our elected representatives close.
Light a candle for Dianne. No, but in all seriousness, this is everything hangs in the balance. And so the idea that we should wait, it's wild. It is unwise. It is not an analytically rigorous position to take.
Yeah. Just let things play out. It's pretty much that stance. Yeah. It is what it is the conventional wisdom right now.